911, what's your emergency? A breathless whisper from the rectory. He's bleeding out, please. He fell. Oh, God. A thud. Stainless clinks. Silence stretched too long. In a sacred kitchen, a body lies where prayer once rose. The voice on the line belongs to a church elder whose reputation anchors a small town. Tonight, that reputation dangles by a thread slick with blood. Authority, image, and an 18-year-old's future are now trapped in the same room. Who kills in a house of worship, and why now? Stay with me. We'll reconstruct the affair, the murder, and the first clumsy moves of a cover-up. In a town where the steeple clocks your week as surely as any calendar, the church is not a building. It is a system. It sets the rhythm. Wednesday study, Saturday setup, Sunday performance, and everyone takes their cue. Proximity to the pulpit is social currency. A handshake with leadership buys respect. A whisper from the right mouth can cancel a season. Within that system, the elder sits at the point of balance. He keeps the books. He chairs the finance committee with a careful hand and an even voice. He decides which projects live, which die, and who will defend the decision in public. People call him prudent. They mean powerful. When a pastor needs a budget line to stretch, it's the elder who finds the margin. When a family needs help with a bill, it's the elder who arranges a benevolence check and reminds them to keep it discreet. He posts scripture before dawn, quotes policy by noon, and corrects rumors before dinner. The thing is, he doesn't just enforce rules, he authors them through precedent. If he allows a deviation once, it becomes tradition. If he denies it twice, it becomes doctrine. Over years, that quiet authorship builds something harder than stone: obligation. Map the power, and you see 3 rings. The inner ring owes him. Board members whose campaigns he quietly backed, small business owners whose donations he routed to the right gala, families he covered during a rough month. The middle ring fears him. Volunteers who've watched a program vanish after crossing him. Singers who lost a solo after asking the wrong question. The outer ring watches him. Retirees on fixed pews who keep mental ledgers and read faces the way auditors read spreadsheets. They don't speak often, but when they do, they're believed. On Sunday, the choreography conceals the gears. A greeter opens the door, the organ swells, the choir rises in blocks of color. The elder sits second row, aisle seat, the position of both piety and surveillance. His nod sends signals. One nod affirms a reading. Another summons a deacon to a fidgeting child. A withheld nod cools a risky announcement mid-sentence. Leadership here is a fluent language. He is one of its native speakers. Now consider the choir. In this town, the choir is the flagship program. It draws visitors, anchors festivals, and secures grants. A prestigious slot means you are seen, and being seen changes small-town math. Jobs open, mentors call. College letters carry weight when ink is scented with stained glass. Parents know this. Teenagers feel it. The elder understands it deeply and uses it gently. He praises in public, mentors in private, and clips wings under the label of maturity. He frames boundaries as care, a rehearsal extended for excellence, a private meeting for guidance, late-night texts about stewarding your gift. None of these acts violate policy on their face. They violate energy. They drain autonomy and refill it with obligation. If you're young and ambitious, it feels like favor. If you're older and jaded, it looks like leverage. The doctrine becomes a tool. He can quote passages about purity to police behavior and passages about grace to excuse proximity. He can call attention accountability when someone questions ours, then recast scrutiny as persecution when it points toward him. It's a playbook refined across committee meetings and quiet hallways, 1 part theology, 1 part finance, 1 part performance. You need to see his hunger, not lust, status. Control is the currency that pays for the image he wears. He does not imagine himself as a villain. He imagines himself as a steward whose methods require understanding, and if understanding fails, obedience will do. This is how institutional power often rationalizes itself, as necessity. Watch how people orbit. A young soloist angles for a greeting after service. The elder praises the tone but advises humility. A deacon schedules a budget subcommittee. The elder suggests a smaller meeting. Just the faithful. A donor wants a plaque. The elder offers a quiet acknowledgement instead, then reminds them of the tax letter's timing. Each interaction deposits a chip into an account only he can audit. Opposition exists, but it whispers. A trustee worries about access to rooms after hours. A parent questions the length of rehearsals. A soprano wonders why some get extra coaching and others don't. The elder smiles and resolves each concern with data, flattery, or delay. He invites questions to a private setting, then reframes them as opportunities. By the time a concern returns to daylight, it's been laundered into gratitude. Now set the calendar. Festival season is approaching. Auditions loom. The choir must excel to protect funding. The board watches numbers. The pastor watches harmony. The elder watches both, quietly stitching outcomes to reputation. He has much to lose if the performance falters. He has more to lose if anyone discovers that performance is a mask. This is the world into which a new 18-year-old choir director will walk. Raw talent, bright eyes, a voice that bends tradition without breaking it. He will draw attention quickly. Attention is supply. The elder is demand. Access will become invitation. Invitation will become expectation. Expectation, when unchallenged, becomes entitlement. And entitlement, when threatened, becomes dangerous. For now, keep the opening image in mind. The rectory's quiet, the elders whisper, the blood. That scene only makes sense when you understand the system that trained his reflexes, the reflex to manage, to shape, to cover. Before a body hit tile, an institution taught a man to protect the image at all costs. He arrives because a vacancy opens overnight. The previous director resigns, citing health and discernment, a phrase that leaves room for speculation but no detail. The board moves fast. A gifted 18-year-old from within the youth program is tapped as interim. He has perfect pitch, a knack for arranging harmonies that feel fresh without scandalizing the pews, and just enough confidence to carry a rehearsal. In small towns, talent is a spark. Institutions decide whether it becomes a flame. From his first Sunday at the helm, people feel the shift. The anthem lands with cleaner diction, tighter cutoffs, and a bridge that lifts unexpectedly, then resolves into a familiar hymn. New faces appear. Classmates from the high school, a music teacher, a couple from the next town who heard the choir was coming alive. Tradition notices and bristles, then softens when the offering numbers tick up. The elder smiles from the second row, aisle seat, watching supply meet demand. He steps forward as patron, a handshake, a compliment, excellence with humility. An invitation to drop by after rehearsal, to review the budget for choir scores, and talk scholarship pathways. He frames access as stewardship. The teenager hears opportunity. The elder looks like a door. In this system, doors are everything. Texts begin as logistics. Rehearsal pushed by 30 minutes to accommodate a deacon's meeting. A suggestion to try a different key for the altos. An encouraging line after a tough Wednesday. Proud of your leadership, stay the course. Then the scope widens. A late-night message with a link to a choral competition out of state. A reminder to guard your circle. Some don't want you to succeed. The intimacy is curated, not explosive. Obligation is the substrate. The elder expands the frame. He offers introductions to a conservatory alum who owes me a favor. He mentions a donor who funds private coaching for promising students, strictly confidential to avoid jealousy. A car repair appears covered after a belt snaps on the way to school. A prepaid debit card for incidentals shows up in a folded bulletin. Each gift arrives with a smile and a verse about generosity. Each acceptance tightens the knot. He isolates without appearing to isolate. He suggests the teen skip casual after rehearsal, hangs to avoid chatter. He offers his study as a quiet place to arrange, free from the noise of family. He tells parents he's ensuring focus, protecting potential from distraction. He tells the teen that scrutiny is real and jealousy is corrosive. Better to keep the circle small and loyal. The circle's center is him. Inside rehearsal, excellence is the public face. He encourages modern textures, percussion on a carol, a jazz voicing on a standard, but always grounds them in hymnody. The room buzzes. Sopranos compete for attention. Tenors steal glances at their phones, waiting for approval. The teen conducts with a light hand and sharp ears. He earns it. He is also being earned. Boundaries blur under mentorship. The elder's messages shift tone. Proud of your character, not just your gift. He praises the teen's obedience to calling, language that binds spiritual identity to professional alignment. He suggests Wednesday night study, scripture, leadership, and integrity under pressure, held in the rectory office. Others are invited occasionally. Most weeks it's one-on-one. The optics are covered by a calendar entry labeled discipleship. Refusal is not forbidden. It is penalized by implication. When the teen hesitates about an extra session, the elder responds with concern about consistency. When he cancels a late-night review, a scheduled meeting with a donor moves 2 weeks out. When he pushes back on repertoire, a solo goes to another. None of this is explicit retaliation. It is correlation draped in care. Parents see a mentor, peers see a favorite. A few adults see a pattern and ask polite questions. Is he taking on too much? Are there safeguards for late nights? The elder answers each with confidence and metrics. Attendance up, giving steady, outcomes strong. He invites concerns in private. He leaves with thanks in public. The questions fade, and the teen keeps conducting. He begins to depend on the elder's feedback like oxygen. Sleep phrase. Grades wobble. He learns the ministry dialect that makes concern sound like disloyalty. When he tries to carve a boundary, no texts after midnight, the elder replies with a verse about vigilance and a note about enemies prowling. He apologizes. He stays up. Then talent pushes the door wider. The teen's arrangement of a spiritual goes minor in the second verse and modulates into a triumphant last chorus. It lands like thunder. A video clip circulates beyond town. A small regional festival extends an invitation. The board credits the program. The elder praises leadership. The teen's profile rises. With it, the elder's sense of ownership intensifies. Access expands beyond professional bounds. The elder begins using pastoral phrases as keys to private space. He drops lines about spiritual warfare that frame any challenge as an attack on calling and any compliance as faithfulness. He plants the idea that secrets are sacred when they protect the work. Secrecy here wears a robe and carries a Bible. One night, after a long rehearsal, a text arrives. Stop by the rectory. Quick review of Sunday's set. It's late. He goes. This is how it starts. One door, one night, one boundary softened by a language that confuses care with control. The hallway to the rectory office is quiet, lit by a single lamp that hums like a secret. He steps inside carrying a binder, the kind of prop that keeps everything professional to anyone watching. No one is watching. The elder waves him toward the small couch, slides a legal pad across the coffee table, and starts with music, tempi, cutoffs, a tricky alto entrance. The air feels normal. if a little too still. Then the door clicks. A lock snicks. The sound is small. The meaning is not. The elder invokes stewardship. "We need to protect your potential," he says, voice pitched to pastoral, eyes reading reactions the way he reads spreadsheets. He talks about envy, about people who would weaponize any hint of impropriety to sabotage the program, and therefore him. He frames privacy as armor, secrecy as wisdom. The teen nods because he's been taught to nod when a mentor narrates danger. He thinks they're discussing optics. They are not. A physical line crosses with the lightest pretext. A hand settles on a shoulder under the banner of prayer. Pressure lingers. It slides into familiarity without declaration, like a hymn that modulates before you realize it. The teen freezes, brain sprinting to interpret, jaw tight, eyes on the legal pad, as if notes could anchor him. The elder murmurs assurance. "I'm proud of you. You're safe here. Don't let the enemy distract you." Phrases that sound like care and behave like keys. The choice inside that freeze is ugly. He can stand, risk the fallout coded into every favor he's accepted, and walk. Or he can rationalize this as cost, temporary, confusing, survivable, in exchange for a future that feels near enough to touch. He does the math the system taught him. He tells himself he misunderstood the moment, that it was mentorship misread. He swallows the alarm and stays seated. Stillness becomes assent. Afterward, the room rearranges around the decision. Gifts appear, an envelope with cash for competition fees, a Bluetooth mic on loan, a new phone plan under the church account for ministry responsiveness. Compliments sharpen into intimacy. You carry yourself like a leader. Your voice heals people. You're set apart. The elder uses covenant language, special and sacred. He reframes secrecy as spiritual practice. Guard the sacred from the profane. The doctrine bends to carry the weight. He sends a half confession to a friend. "Something weird happened with him tonight. I don't know what to do." 3 bubbles appear, then a response he can't bear to read. He deletes the thread minutes later, gut twisting, tells himself he's protecting the program, his family, the scholarship he hasn't seen but has already counted. He promises himself it won't happen again. That promise has no power here. From that night, their channel changes. Texts that used to land at 10 now ping at 1. The label study covers one-on-one sessions that slide from music to scripture to touch and back again. Each boundary crossed, then clothed in language that disarms critique. He learns that saying no resets opportunities. He learns that saying yes buys calm. He starts to measure days in compliance. The elder's frame expands. He calls it a covenant, 2 leaders bound to protect the work at all costs. He quotes verses about private devotion twisted into private allegiance. He warns that enemies would twist anything they don't understand, so they must leave no trace except what he controls. He reminds the teen of every line item he covered, coaching, repairs, fees, as proof of investment and, under the surface, leverage. Gratitude acquires teeth. Outside, the choir thrives. Inside, sleep fractures. He picks at food. His grades dip. He starts to skip group hangs because questions feel like traps. In rehearsal, his hands shake on the cutoff. He hides it by holding a fermata longer than written. People say he's adding intensity. He is covering tremor. When anyone asks about late nights, the elder answers with numbers and smiles. He tells a deacon that excellence requires extra effort. He tells a parent the boy is called to a higher standard. He tells himself he is stewarding a gift through a necessary wilderness. The truth is simpler and colder. He is tightening a net. Secrecy binds them. The choir's success stitches them closer in public, even as fear knots them tighter in private. Pressure mounts like a hymn that keeps modulating upward. The hook set that night will hold until it breaks because time was running out. And the elder knew it. The next move would raise the stakes and close the door. Routine is the quietest prison. It starts with coded messages, an extra comma to mean "come alone," a verse reference that signals the rectory, a thumbs up that really means "don't be late." Wednesday night study becomes the official label, posted on a shared calendar to sanctify private sessions. Doors close at 9. The house hums at a whisper. The teen arrives on time because lateness has consequences. The elder expands leverage by becoming the solution to problems he helps create. A missed shift at the cafe. He knows the manager. A sudden fee for the festival. Covered, just this once. Car making a belt wine. He has a mechanic who serves the church. The boy's mom mentions groceries running tight. A gift card appears, no sender listed, but everyone understands the source. Each fix rewrites the ledger. Gratitude matures into dependency. You see the cost in small physiological slips. Sleep shortens. Eyes stay rimmed red on Thursdays. Grades sag, then stabilize at barely passing as the elder drafts emails to teachers about leadership stress. Mood dips, he laughs less, flinches more. In rehearsal, he overcorrects a tenor line and apologizes 3 times, voice too bright. On Sundays, he lands an anthem with precision, then grips the back of the pew until his knuckles blanch. Church politics tighten the seal. A deacon lobs a concern about late hours and access to practice rooms. The elder neutralizes it with data. Attendance up, incidents 0, outcomes excellent. And with a gentle rebuke, lack of faith masquerading as prudence. He cites policy he wrote by precedent. He frames scrutiny as threat. The deacon bows out, chastened. The signal is clear. Questioning the program equals questioning the church. At home, the teen starts to time his day around messages. Phone on silent in class, but screen face up to catch the light. He stops eating dinner with family on Wednesdays because study runs long. When his sister asks if he's okay, he says he's tired and blessed, the ministry dialect he learned from the elder. He tucks the guilt under those words and keeps moving. Inside the rectory, the mask of mentorship holds. There are scriptures to parse, arrangements to discuss, and lines to cross under the cover of prayer. The elder narrates obedience so often it becomes muscle memory. He threads performance with proximity. Strong set on Sunday, then a quiet moment midweek that binds the win to the private debt. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't need to. Correlation does the work. A small public crack forms when jealousy leaks into the open air. In the fellowship hall, after a rehearsal that ran late again, a veteran soprano mutters, not quite sotto voce, that some people earn their solos the old-fashioned way, practice and fairness, while others enjoy extra coaching. The room stills for a beat. The elder's smile tightens a fraction. He congratulates the choir on excellence, praises the soprano by name for her maturity, and announces rotation changes that remove one of her upcoming features due to blend issues. The message lands. Questions cost. The boy hears that comment and feels heat climb his neck. He wants to defend the work and himself, but knows any protest will be folded into gossip. He turns to the elder for the script. The elder says, "Endure, your fruit will speak," and adds a verse about suffering for righteousness. The boy nods, which in this system is the same as consent. Normalization requires maintenance. The elder checks the boy's tone via text. Are we aligned? He quizzes loyalty, not skill. He plants suspicion about peers. Some resent your calling. Beware confidences. He edges parents out with praise that isolates, "You're unusual for your age. Only a few understand what's required." He cuts the circle down to a tight loop, him, the boy, the program, and calls it protection. Gifts continue, smaller now, but constant. A voice coach paid for by a quiet donor. A ride arranged to an out-of-town workshop. A suit loaned for Sunday presentations. Each item creates an echo, a reminder that the future is attached to a person, not a process. The boy starts to measure choices by their impact on that person's mood. On stage, the mask gleams. The teen leads an anthem with shaking hands, and the congregation hears passion. He cues the final chord with precision, then swallows hard, tasting metal. Applause rises. The elder's nod lands like a stamp of approval and a leash. He smiles toward the second row, hunting steadiness in the recognition. He finds only terms. Behind the scenes, the elder closes loops that might expose him. He asks the janitor to leave the rectory wing unlocked on Wednesdays for pastoral counseling. He starts booking rooms through a secondary calendar to avoid crowded logs. He positions himself as the one who resolves scheduling conflicts, keeping gatekeeping power centralized, outsourced accountability, insourced access. A tongue slips once in a budget meeting. A trustee suggests small surveillance cameras near the rectory wing to deter petty theft. The elder calls it an overreach, a lack of trust in leadership, and a violation of pastoral confidentiality. He wins the vote easily. Later that night, he texts the boy, "Proud of your resilience," and adds a prayer hands emoji. The boy replies with a heart. Pavlov would recognize the bell. By now, the routine is complete. Wednesday night, study. Coded messages, quiet entrances, public excellence, private debt. Every piece fits because repetition has numbed alarm. The system hums and the elder rides the hum, confident he can keep the mask on. Then, a small public crack, the jealous comment The Sopranos' removal, leaves a hairline in the surface. Hairlines spread under pressure, and the pressure is rising. Rumors don't begin as words. They begin as patterns only certain eyes catch. A soprano with a careful memory maps access without meaning to. She notices which doors are unlocked and when, whose car sits by the rectory wing after 9, which Wednesday lights linger in a second-floor window. She isn't hunting scandal. She's guarding fairness. When solos rotate away from her after that comment in the fellowship hall, observation sharpens into suspicion. Across the building, a janitor tracks use by necessity. He logs unusual room bookings because supplies keep vanishing, and he gets blamed when budgets overrun. His clipboard shows a cluster, the rectory office marked as study on nights no one else is scheduled, the kitchen light left on, the back hall camera listed as offline for maintenance 3 weeks running. He mentions it to a deacon in passing. The deacon shrugs. Leadership knows best. The clipboard becomes a quiet archive. Inside the youth group's private chat, screenshots start to circulate. Not proof, not yet, but enough to warm air. A tenor posts a cropped image of a text header on the teen's phone. "Proud of your resilience, always," followed by a prayer hands emoji and a heart. The content could be read as pastoral. The timestamp reads 1:13 a.m. Another screenshot shows calendar entries labeled discipleship stamped over most Wednesdays with a tiny lock icon next to the rectory address. The chat divides instantly. Half say mind your business, half say something's off. The elder feels the shift like a change in barometric pressure. He retaliates the way institutional power often does, through righteous procedure. The soprano who muttered about extra coaching loses her upcoming solo due to blend inconsistencies. He frames it as an artistic decision, cites a vague standard, and praises her humility for accepting correction. It reads as magnanimity to those in the first ring. To the soprano, it reads as a warning. The teen tries to pull back quietly. He delays a Wednesday, cites homework, and asks to move study to a public area. The elder responds with concern, then with gravity. He sends a verse about faithfulness in little things. He reminds the boy of upcoming letters of recommendation, of donors watching, of enemies who would use any gap to attack the program. He calls the hesitation spiritual warfare and adds a line about not breaking covenant right before festival season. Guilt slides the door shut again. He texts a friend, short and slanted, "I need air." The friend replies, "Quit. Come with me Friday, we'll drive." He types, deletes, types again, then sends a different message to the elder. "Yes, I'll be there." Dependence speaks louder than desire. His phone buzzes late with a heart and a cross. He turns it face down and stares at the ceiling until dawn pushes light into the corners of his room. Stake sharpens in a single ask. The college audition packet arrives with instructions and deadlines. The elder offers to write the primary recommendation, the one that anchors the application and signals institutional backing. He uses the right phrases, thrilled to champion, honored to vouch, and the wrong subtext. This letter depends on alignment. The boy hears both. He can't unhear them. Every future he can name runs through that letter. In the choir room, tension picks up a hum. The altos trade side-eye when the teen changes a cutoff twice in 1 minute. A bass asks if the Wednesday study group is open and gets a soft no from the elder. Too advanced for now. A mezzo says she saw the elder's car outside late and laughs to smudge the remark into nothing. Laughter doesn't erase the visual, it just fogs the glass. The janitor adjusts the camera in the fellowship hall and finds the feed from the rectory hall still disabled. He notes the date on his clipboard again. He mutters about liability. He tells himself it isn't his job to push. He goes back to mopping and hears a late piano chord echo from a locked room. He writes down the time without knowing why. Knowing he needs leverage, the boy creates a folder that isn't paper and can't be tucked into a desk. He opens a cloud account, labels it with an innocuous class name, and starts dropping voice notes into it, snippets of conversations recorded when the elder's tone shifts from care to control, moments where scripture becomes rope. He doesn't know if he'll ever use them. He knows he needs something that can't be quietly deleted from a phone. He shares the folder to a private email he keeps for music auditions, and, on impulse, to his sister, though he doesn't tell her yet. Insurance often looks like paranoia until the day it looks like wisdom. The elder senses distance in the boy's replies, shorter, punctuated, less warm. He counters with intensity. He prays longer in private sessions, tears edging his voice. He speaks of betrayal as the enemy's favorite tactic. He hints that donors are fickle and need reassurance that the program is unified under strong leadership. He folds the letter of recommendation into the word loyalty so seamlessly it sounds like a sacrament. Screenshots keep moving in the private chat. The youth pastor tries to slow the churn with a general post about gossip, calling it a sin that destroys communities. It buys a day. Then a new image circulates, a schedule showing the rectory office booked past midnight twice in 1 week. The caption reads, "Who needs discipleship at 12:30 a.m.? The question doesn't demand an answer. It demands attention. We arrive at a threshold. Observation has become rumor. Rumor has become motive. And motive is the fuel that pressure lights. The boy has saved the voice notes. The elder has tightened the net. The community is leaning forward, not yet seeing the fall, but sensing the tilt. From here, every move echoes louder. Budget meetings decide more than numbers. They decide who is allowed to question whom. In a cramped conference room, the trustee raises surveillance again, small cameras near the rectory hall for liability. The elder's smile doesn't reach his eyes. He calls it overreach, a breach of pastoral confidentiality, a cost the church can't justify in this climate. The trustee cites petty theft and insurance premiums. The elder pivots to faith and trust, then, with a colder edge, to stewardship under his office. Voices rise, papers slap the table. When the vote stalls, he attacks the trustee's credibility. Past accounting errors, a late report, weaponizing memory. The motion dies. Cameras won't come. Control stays put. Across town, the teen staggers through rehearsal like he's underwater. He misses cues he could conduct in his sleep. A tenor entrance slips. He tries to reset, loses the measure, and fakes confidence with a bright clap. After the benediction, he folds, hunched over a trash can, stomach emptying while fluorescent lights hum. He wipes his mouth, apologizes to no one and everyone, and says, "It's the flu." Flu doesn't read texts at 1:40 a.m. to see if a heart appears. He drafts a resignation email after midnight, the kind that feels like oxygen as you type it. Clear, direct, short. He writes that he's stepping back for school, for health, for family. He signs his name and hovers over. Send. The cursor blinks like a metronome. He imagines the elder's response, the donor's disappointment, the letter evaporating. He closes the laptop and leaves the email in drafts. The unsent becomes a weight. The elder senses the wobble and stages a private repentance prayer, a familiar ritual reframed as repair. He weeps, voice low, says he's failed in boundaries of affection, uses soft language that floats above the facts. He confesses to pressure without naming leverage, asks forgiveness, then pivots. He frames the boy as his burden and delight, the program as God's work under siege. He closes with a charge. They must be aligned, especially now, and the boy must not abandon his post. The prayer feels like a binding contract. Compliance follows because disobedience feels like betrayal dressed as liberation. The boy books an off-site audition under an alias email, a tiny rebellion with a hotel room attached. He buys a rideshare with gift card credit, screenshotting the receipt to a hidden folder. He tells a friend he's done and means it in the exact way people mean it right before they're pulled back. He doesn't tell the elder. He tries to breathe without a leash. Digital traces accumulate like dust. The rideshare company confirms. The hotel app pings. The email client flags his audition search terms for later helpful notifications. He is building a lattice of intent without realizing it. The kind of lattice detectives love because it narrates a mind in motion. Pressure finds its loudest day in another meeting. The elder argues a minor budget line with major heat, accusing the trustee of undermining ministry by nitpicking expenses related to discipleship. He says the word as if it were bulletproof. The trustee flinches, mentions policy, and gets steamrolled by rhetoric. After, the elder texts the boy. Storms pass, leaders stand. The boy replies, "Okay." A single word with no oxygen in it. His sister notices the tremor when he picks up a glass. She asks again if he's okay. He says he's tired and blessed and laughs too late. He almost tells her everything, then settles for a shard. He says he may change his college plan. She looks at him like he has announced a funeral. He changes the subject to music theory and avoids her eyes. At rehearsal, the elder hovers. He corrects a pedal point the boy already fixed, then announces a Wednesday study on worship integrity, open to select leaders. No one asks what selects them. Everyone understands the selection was done long ago. The boy nods. The net tightens with a smile. After midnight, he listens to a voice note he recorded weeks earlier, the elder's tone hard as glass. "I made you. You owe me." He closes his eyes and hears the word, "oh," like a nail in wood. He names the folder, "The River," so it doesn't look like leverage. He adds a new file, his own whisper, "No more." He doesn't believe himself yet. The recording does the believing for him. The elder schedules alibi messages inside a bathroom at the rectory. Test sends to a family chat. Drafts a thread to a donor praising the boy's growth. Timestamps choreographed. He replaces a faulty bulb in the kitchen and moves knives into a drawer he can control without thinking why he's thinking about control. Ritual becomes premeditation when fear narrates it. He checks the rectory hall camera status and sees offline. His jaw loosens. He tells himself it's providence. It is planning, dressed in providential terms. Time compresses, festival on the calendar, audition looming, rumors hot. The boy deciding to confront because he wants his name back before he leaves. The elder deciding to neutralize because the program, which is his image, cannot survive exposure. Two clocks move toward the same door. You can hear both ticking if you listen under the hymn. The first true breach doesn't happen in a meeting room. It happens in a parking lot under a security light that buzzes like a bad conscience. The friend waits by the boy's car, phone in hand, camera already rolling with the screen dimmed. When the elder steps out of the side door, the friend doesn't posture. He asks a clean question. Why are you meeting him alone past midnight? The elder goes still, recalculates, then chooses denial as strategy. He says the word counseling 3 times, the word slander twice, and warns that false accusations can destroy a church. The friend keeps his voice level. He mentions the rectory hall camera being offline. He mentions the soprano, the room bookings, the discipleship tags after midnight, and the letter of recommendation yoked to compliance. The elder's jaw tightens, but the mask stays on. He calls the question an attack, a worldlier plot, and suggests legal action if the video appears anywhere. That last part matters. Threats aimed at exposure are confessions of risk. 10 minutes later, the boy sends a message that isn't coded. No more, I'm telling them after Sunday. The sentence lands like a clean chord. No verse attached, no emoji, no deference. The elder stares at it too long, crafts a reply that never sends, then tucks the phone away as if the screen might burn him. He has long believed he can outmaneuver dissent. This text tells him he's wrong on timeline. At the next board devotion, the mask slips in a way only practiced observers catch. He leads with a verse he has quoted his whole career and misplaces a clause, swapping grace for glory in a way that reveals preoccupation. His voice cracks on the line about shepherds guarding flocks from wolves. The pastor glances up, surprised. A deacon frowns. The elder smiles too fast and closes the prayer with urgency that smells like fear. While he's bleeding confidence, the friend is moving data. An anonymous packet goes out to the denominational office. Screenshots of midnight calendar entries, notes on room access, a clipped still of the parking lot confrontation, and a link to a cloud folder with the voice notes the boy shared with his sister. He strips names from the cover letter, but keeps specifics about times and rooms. He asks for an independent look. He buys time with a bureaucracy that hates surprises and loves paper. The elder reads the room and chooses a new word: neutralize, not hurt, not harm, just stop the threat before Sunday. He texts the boy, "We meet tonight, rectory. We settle this privately for your sake." He adds the paternal tone that has closed every previous loop. He expects compliance by habit. Habit answers for now. Across town, the boy tells his sister everything in a rush that tastes like relief and bile. He shows her the folder, the rideshare receipt, the hotel booking, proof he's making moves. She says, "Call the police." He says not yet. He wants to reclaim power on his own terms. He believes a recorder and a confrontation will force a letter, a clean exit, and a sliver of accountability. He is 18 and still believes in words arranged in the right order as rescue. The elder prepares space the way a stage manager sets cues. He wipes counters twice. He replaces that faulty bulb in the kitchen. He moves knives to a drawer he can close with his hip. He drafts an alibi thread with scheduled sends, messages to a donor about a grant draft, a text to his spouse about grocery lists, a ping to a deacon about Sunday communion counts. He stares at the bathroom mirror and rehearses repentance, concern, anger, and resignation in sequence. Cold calculation disguised as pastoral flexibility. Tension spikes in a single misstep. He toggles the rectory hall camera and finds it still offline. He doesn't fix it. He tells himself he's honoring confidentiality. The truth is simpler. An unrecorded hallway reduces the number of versions he'll have to explain. He sets his phone on the counter, screen face down. He breathes through a prayer that sounds like strategy. The boy checks the recorder twice and sets auto upload to the cloud folder labeled The River. He pockets a small courage he doesn't fully own yet. He sends his sister the live link. She texts back a single sentence, "If you feel unsafe, leave." He replies with the lie people tell loved ones to make movement possible. "I will." 9:12. A door closes, shoes on tile. The kitchen light burns steady under the new bulb. 2 clocks merge. One runs on fear of exposure. The other runs on the need to be seen without a leash. The meeting is set with words that mean different things to each man. One seeks control. One seeks an exit. Neither understands yet that the room will decide for them. The night before, you always see 2 kinds of preparation. One aimed at freedom, the other at control. The boy starts with truth. He sits on the edge of his bed and tells his sister the whole story without euphemism. Dates, rooms, words that sounded holy and worked like handcuffs. He opens his cloud folder, the one he named The River, and hands her access. She scrolls, hears the elder's cadence harden on a single sentence. "I made you. You owe me," and goes still. She says police now. He says he needs a clean line, one conversation recorded, one demand made, one exit in daylight. She hears risk, he hears return. They move like co-conspirators because trust is the only tool they own. She writes a list: keys, charger, recorder battery, ride-share plan, the off-site audition confirmation. He adds his screenshot of the hotel booking, the email thread with the conservatory, the draft resignation he never sent. She suggests printing copies. He laughs because paper feels archaic until you need something no one can delete remotely. They print anyway. She tucks them into a manila folder and writes a single word on the tab: leave. He practices the ask out loud. Letter of recommendation, immediate, dated on letterhead. A statement he can show to admissions framing his exit as leadership transition, not scandal. A commitment to cease contact. His voice shakes on the last part. He keeps saying it until it lands without a tremor. He doesn't add apology to the script. That's new. She sets boundaries because he can't. If he feels unsafe, she says, he walks. If the elder blocks the door, he calls. If the conversation drifts to sin and loyalty, he repeats his ask once, then ends it. He agrees because she's mapping a route out of a maze he's been taught to enjoy. He hands her his passcode and says, "If you don't hear from me by 10, call." She doesn't smile. She nods like a field medic. Across town, the elder arranges the rectory with the eye of a man who has staged rooms his whole life. Counters wiped, bulb replaced. Knives migrated from the block to the drawer left of the sink. A dish towel folded to the precise square he favors because precision calms him. He tests scheduled texts again. A donor thread about grant language, a spouse thread about milk and eggs, a deacon ping about communion counts. Times staggered to suggest a night of ordinary tasks. This is liturgy for the image he lives in. He rehearses tones in the bathroom mirror where he practices everything public. Repentance soft enough to fog specifics. Concern that centers the boy and displaces accountability. Authority for when obedience needs summoning. Anger as last resort. He lifts his chin, checks his eyes, and decides which order looks righteous. He calls it shepherding. It is choreography. He taps the rectory hall camera icon and sees offline. He doesn't call the trustee or the janitor. He doesn't flip a breaker. He swallows the relief like sacrament. Confidentiality, he tells himself. The church must not be subject to the tyranny of optics. He palms his phone, sets it face down on the kitchen counter, and breathes until his heart stops fluttering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The boy sets the recorder too. Auto upload, opens the live link on his sister's phone, and watches the red dot bloom. He tucks it in his jacket pocket at chest level, Mike pointed up. He sends his sister a text with a simple code, 3 dots if he needs help. She sends back the emoji they invented as kids for ICU, 2 eyes and a tiny anchor. He slides his shoes on and feels the house listening. He leaves his door open. He wants the house to know he walked out with intention. On the drive, he talks to himself. Not prayers. Instructions. Don't explain. Don't absorb guilt. State the ask. If he deviates, return to the ask. If he reaches for you, step back. If he stands in front of the door, name it. He arrives too early and circles the block twice because punctuality has always been obedience here. Tonight he wants to arrive as a person, not a role. The elder makes tea he will not drink. He places 2 cups as if hospitality could paint over leverage. He scrolls through past messages, skimming praise he crafted like hooks. He lingers on a photo from a festival, hand on the boy's shoulder, both smiling into a future only one of them owns. His throat tightens, and he decides that what he's done is care misunderstood by a culture that fears male affection. A story that flat protects the mask. At 9:10, the boy parks where his car won't catch the rectory window. At 9:11, the elder straightens a placemat that didn't need straightening. At 9:12, the door swings and closes behind a figure determined to leave with his name intact. The house holds its breath. The camera in the hall stays dark. The recorder hears the first word spoken in a night that will not bend to either man's plan. He doesn't sit. He stays near the doorway, jacket still on, hands at his sides like he's standing for an oath. The elder gestures toward the table where 2 untouched cups of tea steam. The invitation is a script. The boy doesn't take his line. "I want my letter," he says. "Dated tonight, printed on letterhead, and a statement for admissions that I'm leaving because of a leadership transition. After that, we're done." The elder blinks, reorders his prepared tones. He starts with concern. "You sound agitated. Let's pray. You've been under pressure, and the enemy uses—" "No." The word lands clean. "The letter, the statement, and you stop contacting me." The elder tries repentance next, softening his posture. "If I've blurred lines in affection, I grieve that. I see your calling with such clarity that at times my care was control." He doesn't raise his voice. "It was control, and I'm done." The elder's eyes flick to the hallway, calculation flickering like a shadow. "You think you can threaten me into damaging the church? A letter that implies instability right before festival season? You would wound the very people you've led." "The people I led don't need me this way," the boy says. "They need a program without secrets." The elder steps closer, voice dipping into authority. "You will not use the language of betrayal and call it righteousness. I made space for you, paid for coaches, put my name on your work. You owe me. I owe you nothing you didn't tie to yourself." A glass trembles on the table, a tiny chime against ceramic. The recorder catches the sound like a pin. The elder registers the silence between them as a force. He pivots to pastoral certainty, a tone that has closed so many doors. "We handle this within the house. You will not take private matters into the mouths of gossips. You will not destroy your witness because you're angry." "I'm not angry," the boy says. "I'm clear. The letter, the statement, and you stop." The elder's face tightens, then releases into a practiced smile. "Of course I will write your recommendation. We can frame your transition as strategic. But this language, stop, done, control, this is the vocabulary of children coached by bitter people. Who's whispering to you?" The boy doesn't step back when the elder moves closer. "I told my sister, that's not gossip, that's safety." "Safety?" The elder laughs once, short, a sound with no humor in it. "From whom?" The boy's eyes flick to the drawer left of the sink, the one he clocked opening when he walked in. He keeps his voice steady. "From you." Something hardens in the elder's gaze. Concern evaporates. Authority calcifies. Hand me your phone. No. I am protecting the church from a scandal built on slander and immaturity. If you're recording me, it is illegal without consent in pastoral care. This isn't care, the boy says. It's leverage, and I'm done. He moves toward the door. The elder steps in front of him, one hand raised, palm open, a gesture he's used 10,000 times to settle rooms. It works on crowds. It doesn't work here. The boy angles right. The elder mirrors, blocking again. The air thins. You will not walk out and light rumors on fire, the elder says, voice low. You will not drag my name or this church through sewage because you're confused about affection. I'm not confused. He keeps his spine straight. Move. Sit, the elder says, the word a command dressed as invitation. This can be resolved. I'm leaving. He steps, shoulder brushing the elder's chest. The elder's hand lands on his jacket, not a grip, not yet. But wait. The boy flinches and shoves the hand away without thinking. They stumble in a two-step dance, neither rehearsed. A hip in the table, a cup gliding and tipping, a thin crack of ceramic against tile. A candle on the counter wobbles, tips, wax sliding in a slow, bright curve onto wood. Look what you're doing, the elder says, as if a spill could testify. He reaches, and the boy raises an arm to block, open palm catching an elbow. A chair leg scrapes across tile, a sound like a blade drawn. The elder's breath goes ragged, and the cadence of his speech shifts. The pastoral vowel disappears. You do not get to leave like this. You will sit down. I'm walking out, the boy says, turning his shoulder to slip past. The elder sidesteps, body square, blocking the door with a familiarity that makes the boy's scalp prickle. He pivots toward the kitchen where space opens. The elder follows, a shadow glued to his movement. Letter, the boy says, trying to keep the script. Statement. Stop contacting me. You will bury me, the elder says, voice raw now. You will take everything I've built and hand it to people who hate me. For what? For a misread of care? The boy stops, turns to face him fully. For me. The room holds still for a heartbeat. Then the elder moves. Not a punch, a reach, a drawer yanked open, wood clapping back. The boy's arm shoots up, instinct before thought, to deflect what he can't see. The elder's hand closes around weight. A heavy marble mortar rises into view, not a blade but a blunt certainty, white with veins through stone. For an instant, both freeze, one in adrenaline, one in calculation turned into action. Don't, the boy says, voice small and steady at once. The elder swings. A glass shatters somewhere behind them. The recorder hears the chair scrape, the breath, the wordless sound that cuts a hallway like a siren and dies as fast. Impact first. Marble meets temple with a dull, wet thock that doesn't echo so much as settle into the room. The boy's head snaps right. A fine mist lifts and freckles the cabinet face in a crescent. He goes down not like in films, not clean. Knees buckling first, shoulders skidding along a drawer pull, cheeks smearing a red arc that fingerprints into the grain. The mortar drops to the floor, a clumsy clang that feels obscene after the thock. Convulsions ripple, hands pawing air that won't organize. A thin sound catches in his throat, half inhale, half drowned whistle. The elder freezes, eyes wide, then lunges on instinct learned in first aid classes, palm pressing the wound at the temple as if pressure could reverse stone. Blood pools under his hand, hot and startling, and squeezes through his fingers in a ribbon, dripping off the heel onto tile. He mutters "boy" like a mantra, breath chopping, voice pitched wrong. His palm slips, skin, sweat, and blood make a slick chemistry. Physics takes over what panic cannot. The arterial spray doesn't appear yet. This is venous ooze, steady, dark, smearing as the body shifts. The boy's heel scrapes a half moon on the floor. His hand reaches, finding the cabinet handle, tries to climb the room back to standing, and almost makes it to an elbow. The elder sees the movement and hears it as threat, the future reanimating. He snatches the mortar with his clean hand, grip clumsy, and swings again. The second blow lands, slightly posterior, above the ear, crushing bone into a geometry it was never meant to hold. The sound is wetter, the spray finer. A short, fan-shaped cast-off freckles the elder's forearm and the apron hanging on the pantry door. The boy's body jerks once, then slackens. The convulsion stops. Silence drops in a way that makes the ticking oven clock suddenly enormous. Blood now pools as a sheet, finding tile grout lines and exploiting them, capillaries of grout filling in a gray-red thread that will later sing to investigators. A bubble rises and pops near his lips. The elder's breath saws. He drops the mortar. This time it rolls once and kisses the toe of his dress shoe, leaving a dark kiss on polished leather. He staggers back, handprints blooming on the cabinet as he uses surfaces to stay upright. Right hand red to the wrist, left hand clean but shaking. He looks at the boy and then away, forcing his eyes anywhere else. The candle's curved wax, the towel folded too neatly, the drawer yawning. He pulls a dish towel, presses it to the head, and then yanks it back immediately because the towel turns from white to marbled in a second. And he hears his brain counting stains. He says no to the room 3 times, voice small. He kneels, checks for breath without wanting to know. There's a wheeze, then not. The health app on his wrist pings a heart rate spike in a locked ecosystem he doesn't know how to mute. He thinks to pray, and what comes out is a string of words without content. He presses 2 fingers to the neck where he's seen people press in movies. He cannot find a pulse through shaking. He calls the boy's name and adds son at the end, a word that doesn't fit here, and slides off the tile. He stands, slips, catches himself on the counter, leaves another handprint. He looks down and sees his shoe print stamped in the sheet. Heel, arch, toe, with that tiny worn edge investigators will match to a pair drying in his closet. He lifts his foot and steps back, then forward, printing over the print in a panic that multiplies evidence while trying to erase it. He wipes at the floor with the towel, smears making comet tails that tell a story of movement. The apron on the pantry door wears a constellation of fine drops that arced off the second swing. He notices it and grabs it in a sudden thought to wipe his arms. He smears the freckles into pink swaths, adding a palm heel streak that becomes a signature. He scrubs the mortar in the sink, water running pink, then red, then almost clear, a crescent of tissue clinging to the groove in the stone like a stubborn rind. He doesn't see it. Panic narrows vision. He drags the body by the underarms toward the stairs, leaving a thick snail track. The head leaves a parallel smear higher on the cabinets, interrupted by handle pulls. At the staircase, he props the body at an angle, a tableau of gravity and misstep he hopes will rationalize the noise he made earlier. He curses the broken banister he fixed last month. A staged fall needs a prop. He rips the top rail anyway, splinters his palm, leaves a line of his own blood that will read distinct in color and pattern. Back in the kitchen, he breathes like a man who ran and didn't. He wipes where he remembers stepping, misses where he didn't look. He says the word accident out loud, once, twice, 5 times, teaching his mouth the lie. He glances at the phone on the counter, at the candle guttering low, at the drawer still open like a jaw. He closes it slowly, as if quiet could undo blunt force. He turns the mortar in the sink, scrubs again, misses the crescent in the groove. He straightens the towel as if order will return order. Then he picks up the phone and dials, finding a voice that can braid calm and panic into a story that almost fits the blood still moving in thin lines toward the grout. Cover-ups don't start with genius. They start with reflex. He drags the body back from the staircase he staged and recalibrates the tableau with a financier's eye for plausibility. The angle is wrong. The head wound won't marry a tumble. He repositions the body closer to the first landing, nudges a shoe to hang off 2 steps down, and splinters more wood from the rail to seed chaos. Each adjustment deepens contradiction. The wound speaks kitchen. The scene argues stairs. He needs distance between the last contact and the call. He lifts the boy's phone by the fingertips, turns the screen with a knuckle, and scrolls to a thread labeled simply Sis. He types with care. I'm fine, heading home, big day tomorrow. He adds a musical note to imitate his tone. He hesitates, deletes the emoji, settles for a period. He's seen the boy avoid emojis when tired. He hits send. The timestamp lands like a wager. Alibi scaffolding comes next. He taps his own phone and opens the scheduled threads he prepped earlier. One drips domesticity. Out of milk, grabbing some in the morning. Another mentions a donor's grant paragraph. A third asks a deacon about communion sets. He reschedules them to fire in 10-minute intervals starting soon, to seed the idea that he was alone, doing quiet work, mind on church, not on blood thickening along grout. He wipes the mortar again, this time with dish soap, rinse, dish soap again. He turns it under the faucet and watches pink eddies spin away as if water could absolve stone. He misses that crescent of tissue in the groove, tucked where fingers don't quite reach. He pats the mortar dry and returns it to its spot on a wooden trivet, slightly askew, damp ring blooming under it. He doesn't see the ring as an admission. He sees it as done. He moves through the kitchen making erasures and mistakes. He scrubs the floor in an arc around his clean-foot path and leaves untouched islands of drying blood that will map his movement later. He takes the apron with the cast-off constellation and shoves it into the washer, runs a rinse cycle, only smearing dots into pale clouds. He wipes a cabinet pull streak and leaves a fingerprint on the cabinet door above it, a red comma in a paragraph he thinks he's ending. He deletes the last few calls from his phone log, then thinks better, and re-adds a couple of innocuous dials to a deacon and a grocery. He swipes through photos, checks nothing, and closes the app, not realizing the recorder's file has already jumped to the cloud through the live link. He doesn't remember the health app ping. He doesn't know about geofence warrants. He believes the house is a closed system because he disabled a camera. Digital dust doesn't care about his belief. He rehearses, walking the hall and reciting the call. Heard a thud, came running, found him on the stairs, must have slipped, tried to help, called immediately. He edits the timing in his mouth, shortens gaps, finds a cadence that sounds like shock. He practices a tremor. He practices stillness. He washes his hands until the water runs clear and the sink looks like he didn't wash them at all. He checks the boy's phone again and considers one more text, maybe to the friend. All good, long night. But decides silence is safer. He opens the boy's email, half-formed resignation sitting in drafts, and almost sends it to make a narrative of burnout. He doesn't. He fears forensic headers, IP addresses, the ghost fingerprints of metadata he's heard tech volunteers brag about. He deletes the draft instead. The cloud, of course, already indexed a version hours ago. He steps to the doorway and studies the stairs the way he studies budgets, looking for leaks. He sprinkles water from a glass onto the third step to suggest a slip. It glints, useless against blood spatter physics. He nudges the boy's hand so fingers curl around a banister rung. He pulls away, leaving a smeared crescent on the wood that reads like an edit, not an accident. He breathes. He picks up the phone. He dials, voice pitched to calm then panic, the way practiced men in emergencies talk when they need to sound like men in emergencies. Rectory. He fell. He's bleeding. Please. He gives the address clean. He pretends to start chest compressions, counts under his breath because counting sounds like effort. He drops a God help us in the middle. It lands rehearsed. He ends the call, shaking, real this time. He crouches beside the body and presses the towel once more, leaving new smears over old ones. He stands and wipes the counter where his palm rested, missing the faint wax curve from the candle, now solidifying into a time anchor. He walks to the bathroom, glances at his reflection, sees the tremor in his jaw, and tells himself he's done enough. He kills one light and leaves another. He steps into the hall, notices again the blank eye of the dead camera, and feels relief uncurl low in his chest. He thinks, contain, control, survive. He thinks, reputation can be rebuilt if there's no scandal. He thinks everything but the only thing the room keeps saying back to him in tile and wood and stone. Evidence isn't loyal. The call lands at dispatch with the right shape. Address clear, voice controlled, then frayed. Rectory. A fall. Stairs. He's bleeding. Please. The dispatcher anchors him with questions, building a clock. When did you hear the thud? Is he breathing? Are you alone? He answers too quickly, then stumbles. I was in the kitchen, then the hall, then... The pause stamps a gap on the tape. Units roll, patrol, fire rescue, and ambulance. Small town speed, 3 minutes stretches to 7. Red wash hits stained glass and throws bleeding color into the nave. Paramedics take the stairs 2 at a time, gear clattering. The elder is halfway down the hall, phone still in his hand, towel dark in the other, face pale and damp. He slipped, he says, before anyone asks. I tried to... They pass him, already reading the scene. You can always tell a fall that fits. This one doesn't. A paramedic kneels, gloved fingers to the neck, eyes to the head wound. The laceration is localized, crushing beneath, not the broad abrasion of wood bite. Blood distribution argues kitchen, not staircase. Thick sheet trailing from the rectory wing, diluted near the 3rd step, where a glassworth was sprinkled and already drying in spotted ovals. The towel stalled where it mattered most, pressed, then lifted, pressed again. The elder says, he seized before falling, and the medic logs the phrase, it will return. A patrol officer posts at the doorway, eyes mapping. He notes the banister splinter fresh, torn across the grain with parallel striations from human hands, not a body. He notes the boy's fingers curled around the rung, but smeared just above, as if placed and adjusted. He tracks a faint wax curve on the nearby counter through the hall, odd, domestic, not part of the fall story. He glances at the dark dome of the hall camera. Camera operational? He asks. The elder blinks, too long. Maintenance. We were addressing an issue. The medic calls time on breath. They move to compressions because protocol is a shield, even when futility is obvious. Chest counts fill the hall with numbers that feel like control. 32, 30. The elder chimes a beat behind, voice low, a prayer threaded with, I'm sorry and God help us. A paramedic's boot lands in a fading print. He lifts it, studies the oval. Dress shoe, he murmurs to his partner. Socks don't stamp like that. Bare feet don't have an edge like a worn heel. Questions begin before the law says the word homicide out loud. How did you hear the fall? Were you together? Where were you when he arrived? The elder's answers develop a sheen. Plausible, polished, inconsistent at the joints. Kitchen, he says. We were talking about Sunday's set. Then, I stepped away to the restroom. I heard a crash. The timeline bends. The officer files the inconsistencies like nails in wood. One medic peels the towel from the head. The cloth lifts heavy, suctioned at the wound, and strands cling. The pattern beneath is unmistakable. Blunt force trauma, focal, depressed. Not the rake a stare would grant. She doesn't say it. She meets her partner's eye. Messaging changes. We need the detective, the officer says softly into his shoulder mic. Secure the scene. No one in or out. He doesn't touch the mortar he can't see yet. He doesn't need to. The room is already talking. The elder reaches for language he knows calms rooms. He has vertigo, he offers, as if a medical term can staple physics into place. He seized before falling. The paramedic tilts her head. Who diagnosed vertigo? He hesitates. He mentioned dizziness. He adds a medical phrase he once heard in a meeting, benign positional something, and misplaces a word. It lands wrong. A medic marks it. The officer steps into the rectory wing and follows the red logic backward. There it is. A kitchen stop-start. Wipe arcs low on the cabinet faces, a damp ring under a marble mortar that sits a little crooked on a wooden trivet. He doesn't touch. He photographs with his phone until crime scene techs arrive. He pockets the image of a crescent of something in the mortar's groove, a pale cling against stone. He glances at the oven clock, blinking 9:22, a power flicker or a reset. Time anchor noted. Back in the hall, the elder composes. He texted his sister. He was heading home, he says, as if that redeems chronology. The officer asks, "May I see your phone?" He hands it over without unlocking. The officer doesn't push yet. He logs the time of the last call, the spacing of sent messages, the tidy cadence of alibi chatter walking toward them on schedule. He asks for the boy's phone. The elder says he doesn't know where it is. A medic points wordlessly to the floor a yard away, face down, vibrate, ticking against tile. They call it time of death aligned to the paramedic's watch, not to the story. The officer radios the detective and the pastor. The hall feels colder. Someone switches off the candle in the kitchen. Wax holds its curve, soft enough to remember a minute ago. An usher arrives and is kept at the threshold. The elder asks to pray and is told to wait. He nods, eyes on the stairs he built and the kitchen that will not stop speaking. The detective arrives without fanfare and lets the room speak first. He stands in the doorway, reads the stairs, then turns his head toward the rectory wing where the air still smells metallic. Falls prefer edges, broad scrapes, diffuse arcs. What he sees is focus. He makes no declaration. He pulls on gloves and begins the walk. He anchors the body with photographs and a slow orbit. Position, limb angle, head tilt, pooling. He crouches, studies the wound pattern through the medic's report, and files the geometry. Focal depression, stellate cracking radiating under hair. He follows the sheet of blood backward, away from gravity's argument, and into the kitchen where the story sharpens. On the cabinets, low and lateral, wipe arcs curve at hand height. Broad, hurried, incomplete. Above them, a smear at shoulder level, broken by hardware, tells of a body dragged, shoulder-catching pulls. He traces a snail track across tile, the grout lines filled where fluid sought channels. He pauses at a crescent of misted spatter on a cabinet face. Fine, directional, opening from a point that isn't a riser edge. The hall camera's dead eye sits 3 doors down. He notes it, but doesn't look long. Devices will tell him later when it went dark. He steps into the kitchen. A candle sits in a shallow dish near the counter edge, wax cooled into a curved lip still soft under his glove. Time anchor. He touches it lightly with the back of a knuckle, and it yields. Not liquid, not hard. He glances at the oven clock, blinking 9:22 in reset rhythm. Power anomaly or interference, the sort of detail techs love. On the counter, the marble mortar is back on its wooden trivet, slightly off-center, a damp ring darkening the wood beneath. He bends, eyes close to the stone, and spots a pale crescent lodged in the groove, a bit of tissue clinging where dish soap doesn't always reach. He doesn't extract it. He photographs it from 3 angles, scale card and frame. He tracks a faint spray constellation on the pantry apron, now damp from a rinse, dots pulled into streaks, still readable as cast off from a mid-height swing. He kneels to the floor and finds shoe prints layered over themselves, one crisp impression with a worn outer heel edge, then a muddled overlay where someone tried to stamp out the clarity. He measures the heel width, notes the pattern, and files a mental match to the dress shoe he glimpsed drying, heel up, in the elder's closet when patrol secured the house. He follows a ghosted print into the hall where a paramedic stepped in and preserved it with a photograph by accident. The accidental images are often the truest. He drags a light across the counter and sees a mist streak fluoresce faintly, blood wiped thin along a line a forearm would leave during bracing. He sights along the cabinet faces and sees missing dust, a clean witness strip where the mortar sat damp and was moved back slightly askew. He doesn't need theatrics. Gravity, surface tension, and habit have built him a diagram. The elder waits in a pew-length silence near the doorway, eyes tracking the detective's gaze like a student trying to read an exam key. The detective doesn't engage. He asks only for access. "Closet with your shoes?" He is led to a hall closet where a pair of dress shoes rest on a folded towel, uppers wet, laces loose. He bends, photographs the sole, the worn heel edge, the darkened leather toe. He smells soap and something mineral. He doesn't touch. He asks for the laundry room and finds an apron in the washer, drum stopped mid-rinse. He notes the cycle setting without comment. Back in the hall, he checks the banister. Fresh splinters point in a direction fingers would create, not a body. Rake marks are parallel and high, not low and chaotic. He logs the height of the smear just above the boy's curled fingers and the unnatural curve of those fingers around the rung. Placement, not grasp. He has the officer bag devices, the elder's phone, the boy's phone, the rectory Wi-Fi router, the disabled hall camera, the smart ovens module, because clocks remember even when people don't. He instructs a tech to photograph scheduled messages in flight. Metadata will do the rest. He looks up at the ceiling, follows a line of recessed lights, and asks for the breaker panel location. Power anomalies love to hide near narrative shifts. He circles back to the kitchen one more time, lets his eyes soften, and listens for the simple math. Arterial spray is absent where a fall would flick, but cast off is present where a swing would end. Wipes sit low where panic reaches. The mortar's ring is a clock. The wax curve is a clock. The oven blink is a clock. He doesn't announce a conclusion. He speaks in tasks. Bag the mortar, swab the groove, luminol the cabinet faces, photograph every shoe impression, and lift the best with gel. Collect the apron as is, swab the banister smear and the splinter ends. Pull the router logs and camera maintenance records. I want SIM swaps and cloud warrants started tonight. He turns to the elder only then. "We'll need your clothes." Calm, procedural. The elder nods, a notch too slow. The detective steps out to the night air, writes one line in his notebook, and lets it sit. Staged fall, inconsistent with blood, tool present. Inside, the house holds its evidence like a ledger waiting to be read. Now the case shifts from floors and fibers to clocks and code. Digital systems don't care about charisma. They record, they timestamp, they align. First, the cloud. The recorder in the boy's jacket was set to auto-upload. When the Wi-Fi connected at the rectory, a live file began writing itself to a remote folder labeled The River. Mid-incident, packets left the house in small bursts, each carrying a fragment of sound, the demand for a letter, the block at the door, the drawer yanked, the first blows sick thock, the second blows spray, and the silence that followed. The upload didn't complete in one stream. It stitched across minutes with gaps that look like signal jitter. That matters. It places the audio creation and transfer inside the rectory during the exact window the elder claimed a simple fall. Even when the elder later deleted the voice memo from the device, the cloud preserved an earlier server-side version with a completed hash. The detective doesn't need the phone to speak. The server speaks. Next, the scheduled texts. The alibi thread that trickled out to a donor, a spouse, and a deacon. Those messages carry metadata stamped by the phone's operating system. Geolocation tags, even when a user disables them, leak in header fields and network logs. The pattern shows each message originating from the rectory's bathroom, repeating the same signal strength and BSSID, the unique identifier of the rectory's router, for a neat cluster of minutes. The language is domestic, but the origin is surgical. He thought spacing them would read as ordinary. The system shows orchestration. One text fires at 9:28, another at 9:38, a third at 9:47. The boy's health app records a spike and then a catastrophic drop at 9:24. The cadence is wrong for coincidence. Rideshare data closes the loop on motive and movement. The boy's alias email booked an off-site audition and a room. The rideshare receipt places his device at the rectory at 9:12 and forecasts a planned pickup near his home later that night. When he didn't trigger the later trip, the app logged a no-show. Audit logs show he checked the upcoming ride briefly at 9:05, a planning glance. Intent lives in those little peaks. Email search alerts fill in the narrative spine. His account pinged for conservatory submissions and audition repertoire minutes before he left for the rectory. Browser tabs were still open on a desktop at home. Repertoire guidelines, recommendation letter samples, a template for leadership transition language. The open tabs freeze the mind he carried into the meeting. Exit, documentation, daylight. The geofence warrant draws a circle around the rectory and asks every device that crossed that invisible boundary to raise its hand. 2 phones answer consistently for 73 minutes, the elders and the boys. A few minutes before 9, the elder's device pings the kitchen. At 9:12, the boy's device enters the perimeter and latches to Wi-Fi. Between 9:20 and 9:26, both devices stay within a tight radius that matches the kitchen's footprint. At 9:27, the elder's phone takes a short walk to the bathroom and parks there while scheduled texts queue and fire. At 9:33, it returns to the hall. The boy's phone doesn't move again under its own power. Movement without intent is still movement. Accelerometers record short drags. The health streams are the bluntest clocks. The elder's smartwatch shows a sharp surge at 9:22, sustained elevation through 9:35, and shaky variability after, adrenaline signature, not a measured caregiver's. The boy's phone, paired to a fitness band, shows a heart rate climbing with stress during the confrontation, then dropping abruptly at 9:24 to a flat line. You don't need sound to read those lines. They are the pulse of the event itself. Router logs betray the hall camera's alibi. Maintenance mode toggled at 3:17 p.m. the previous day, not by an automated process, but by a manual login from the elder's account. The camera's pings stopped. The router kept a note. Device disabled, user ID, IP address, timestamp. He believed a dead lens meant a dead record. The router kept the ledger. Then, the sister's forward lands, access to the river folder, and a text history that fills in the pressure. The detective hears the elder's voice harden on, "I made you. You owe me." He hears the boy whisper, "No more." The friend supplements the package with the parking lot video. Denial, slander threats, the mask flexing under pressure. One small clip, one small mic, 2 vantage points, inside and out. Finally, the forensic time anchors converge. The oven clock's 9:22 blink, the soft wax curve that yields at the same moment, the damp ring beneath the mortar drying along a predictable arc, the scheduled texts firing from the bathroom, the health spikes and stops, the cloud uploads stitching across those minutes. Independently, each artifact is interesting. Together, they form a lattice that doesn't care about reputation. The profile is simple. Control challenged, confrontation escalated, blunt force applied, scene staged, digital dust ignored. Evidence doesn't argue. It aligns. The room is small by design. Neutral walls, 2 chairs, a table that turns posture into evidence. The detective lays out nothing except a legal pad and a pen. He lets silence earn its keep before the first question. Walk me through the counseling tonight. The elder exhales like a man opening a sermon. He came for guidance. We prayed. He was agitated. I stepped to the restroom. I heard a thud. I found him on the stairs. Agitated how? Overwhelmed. School, festival, the usual pressures on young leaders. The word young lands a shade too heavy. Any conflict? Pastoral disagreement, he says. Boundaries are hard for teenagers who feel called. The detective writes teenager, then draws a small box around it. You disabled the hall camera yesterday. Why? Confidentiality. People don't confide when a lens stares at them. Router shows a manual login from your account at 3:17. You aware of the policy requiring two-person counseling if cameras are down? I'm the one who wrote that policy, he says, smiling without teeth. Exceptions exist. Exceptions for you, the detective says, voice flat. Tell me about the kitchen. The kitchen? The wax on the counter, the mortar, the wipe marks, your shoe prints. He taps the pen twice, a soft metronome. The elder's hands fold, then unfold. I made tea. We talked. He was restless. I don't know what to tell you about wax. You didn't touch him in the kitchen? I tried to help after the fall. In the kitchen? Near the stairs, he says, correcting as if he can nudge geometry. The detective slides a photo across the table. The mortar on the trivet. Damp ring, blooming. A pale crescent lodged in the groove. He doesn't narrate. He lets the image do the talking. The elder's eyes go to the groove and stay there, a fraction too long. That basin is heavy, he says quickly. People move things when they panic. Mortar, the detective corrects, not unkind. It was washed. Not well. The elder shifts. Are you accusing me of... I'm asking what happened when he said he was leaving. A flicker. The mask tightens. He is a gifted boy who misunderstands affection and authority. He was emotional. He should not be alone with decisions of this magnitude. The detective allows the word boy to hang. He told his sister he was leaving. He booked an audition. He had a resignation draft. That's not sudden emotion. That's a plan. I don't monitor his computer, the elder says, bristling. You monitored the access, the detective says. Rectory office bookings after midnight. Discipleship tags with lock icons. You removed a soprano's solo after she raised concerns. She had blend issues, he replies, the pastoral cadence turning brittle. Your texts at 9:28, 9:38, 9:47. The detective continues, voice even. Scheduled from your bathroom. Alibi messages read like chores. The boy's heart rate flatlined at 9:24. That's 4 minutes before your first text. Help me reconcile. The elder swallows. I don't know what an app says. I was in shock. The detective nods as if accepting a weather report. Then he plays 10 seconds of audio from the cloud, a chair scrape, the elder's voice hard and close. I made you. You owe me. The boy's answer. I owe you nothing you didn't tie to yourself. The drawer yank. He stops it just before the sound of stone on bone. The room contracts. That's illegally obtained, the elder says, quick and practiced. The detective's tone stays mild. Auto-uploaded by the device owner to his own cloud. We have consent. We also have the parking lot video. You say slander. You threaten legal action. Your words track fear, not care. He was recording pastoral care without consent, he repeats, as if invocation might rewrite law. This wasn't care, the detective says. This was leverage, and when he said he was done, it became force. The elder's face shifts, a hairline crack. He put hands on me. He shoved. He made me fear a public scene. Where did he shove you? The detective asks. He glances at the photo again. By the table. Your forearm swipe on the counter is at kitchen height, the detective says. Your shoe prints ring the pool. The banister splinter shows finger rake, not body scrape. The apron in your washer is spattered with cast-off, not drip. The mortar has tissue in the groove. He keeps his voice soft. This isn't a debate, it's physics. The elder stares at the tabletop and performs contrition, reaching for the secure lane. I have devoted my life to this church. I have protected boys like him from a world that eats them. If I am guilty of anything, it's care expressed clumsily. The detective doesn't move. When did you last strike someone with a tool in clumsy care? A silence. The kind that lifts a story out of a person or pushes it deeper. He chooses deflection. My attorney, we can stop now, the detective offers. But understand the posture we're in. You asked him to meet in a house with dead cameras. You staged a fall that doesn't match the wound. You sent alibi messages while he died. And you looked at that mortar. He flips another photo. The elder's dress shoes on a towel, soles wet, heel edge worn to a distinctive chip. Then the gel lift of the print near the kitchen, the same chip. Then the oven's blinking 9:22. Then the wax curve, a private liturgy of clocks. The elder's voice drops. He said he would destroy me. He said he would tell the truth, the detective replies. There's a difference. A long breath pulls through the elder's teeth. He attacked me. Then why no marks on you? The detective asks. No bruises, no torn fabric, no defensive wounds except the splinter in your palm from ripping a rail to dress a scene. The elder's jaw works, a tick trying not to exist. I tried to stop him from leaving, he says, almost a whisper, a confession in passive voice. You blocked the door, the detective says. Then you reached for a drawer. Then you swung. A knock. 2 uniforms wait in the hall, as quiet as hinges. The detective closes his pad. We're done for now. You're under arrest for second-degree murder. The elder's eyes find the photo of the mortar again. They won't leave it. Hands tremble. He says nothing as the cuffs circle bone and history. The door opens. The corridor outside feels longer than it is. The morning after the arrest, the church unlocks its doors to a silence that feels deliberate. People enter like they're stepping onto ice. No bulletin can carry this weight. Before noon, leadership calls an emergency meeting in the fellowship hall. The statement is crisp, vetted, and evasive. Grief for a tragic loss. Prayers for all involved. Commitment to due process. Confidence in God's sovereignty. They say nothing about the kitchen, the mortar, or the hall camera. They do say misinformation and restraint. It sounds like a lid lowering, but the congregation has already heard the sound behind the words. In rows of metal chairs, faces split along familiar seams. Defenders stiffen first. They speak in the register of preservation. He served for decades. He raised funds when no one else could. He visited our mother when she was dying. They call the arrest persecution, an attack on a faithful man by a system that hates churches. One of them whispers about the boy as a troubled youth who drew near to power for what it could give him. That phrasing floats for a second and then lands like a bruise. Across the aisle, another current builds, lower, steadier. Questions cut through the fog. Who approved after-hours counseling alone with cameras down? Who enforced the 2-adult rule for youth spaces? Why did concerns about room bookings and rehearsal hours turn into discipline for the soprano? A deacon stares at his hands and says the policy was clear, but the practice drifted around it. Drift is a kind word for complicity. Parents are the first to act with their feet. They pull their kids from the choir quietly, like extracting IVs. Sign-ups shrink by the hour. A mother who has never confronted leadership stands at the information table and asks for the volunteer handbook. She points to a paragraph about escalation. Who received complaints? Where are the records? The volunteer shrugs, sorry and hollow. Records live in heads here. Heads pick sides. By afternoon, the denominational office announces an independent inquiry. They use words the congregation doesn't hear often: audit, access logs, reporting pathways. The pastor, flanked by 2 board members, nods into a camera and says, "Transparency." The word is new on their tongues. It needs practice. Small gestures become signals. The soprano who was benched for attitude returns her robe without a word. She leaves it folded on an empty pew, wide sleeves like a gesture of release. The choir room feels wrong without her voice. A tenor who once laughed at rumors looks at the robe and finally stops defending the indefensible. He texts 3 sentences to a friend. "I saw. I should have known. I'm sorry." Online, the friend's parking lot video spreads through private threads, then leaks into public spaces where people who never met the elder discuss him with the confidence distance grants. The comments fracture. Some press for patience, others name grooming and power. A former church intern posts a careful paragraph about boundaries that never anchored, midnight discipleship that felt like ownership. She keeps names out. The pattern doesn't need them. Inside the building, staff triage operations like a hospital after a crash. Who has keys? Who can sign checks? Who handles counseling requests tonight? They discover how many doors, literal and policy, ran through one person. Monopolized authority doesn't leave replacements, it leaves gaps. In a side office, a finance volunteer pulls a stack of vendor files and sees how neatness masked concentration. He feels anger rise, not at chaos, but at order used as a screen. Sunday comes. The sanctuary is both fuller and emptier than usual. People who stayed sit farther apart. People who left watch the stream and count absences. The pastor steps into the pulpit without the elder sitting on the front pew. That empty space reads louder than any confession. The sermon doesn't touch details. Legal counsel has circled sentences in red. Instead, the text lands on truth and power without saying why. The silence underlines every verse. Afterward, the foyer doesn't host chatter. It hosts quiet triage. A father asks a deacon to look him in the eye and say his daughter is safe. The deacon can't. He says, "We're changing things this week." The father says, "We needed them changed last year." The deacon nods because the sentence is correct. Some defenders harden. Their loyalty calcifies into grievance narratives. Secular authorities targeting the church, a culture allergic to strong leadership, a vulnerable young man misled by outsiders. But the narrative keeps tripping over the mortar, the shoe prints, the schedule of texts from a bathroom, the recorder's upload. Facts are stubborn when they don't require belief. Community life reorganizes along a new map. Small groups that used to study theology begin studying policy. Parents trade spreadsheets for sign-in practices and 2 adult rules. A retired teacher volunteers to rework the youth calendar with transparent scheduling and visible room assignments. Donors pause pledges, then call to say they'll resume if oversight changes. Money speaks in conditions now, not in praise. The mask doesn't rip in one motion. It frays, thread by thread, in rooms that once offered certainty. Yet the shape underneath is clear enough. A culture that mistook charisma for accountability, results for righteousness, access for care. The choir's anthem the next week is thin, but the notes that remain are honest. In the second row, the soprano's robe stays folded, a quiet indictment and a promise that when voices return, they will sing under light. In court, the state doesn't chase outrage. It builds a spine and hangs proof on it. The opening frames the profile. Grooming disguised as mentorship, leverage presented as care, then violence when control met resistance. The prosecutor starts with language the jury can hold. Mentorship is structure plus boundaries. Grooming is access plus secrecy. What happened in those rooms wasn't spiritual formation. It was exploitation calibrated to a teenager's ambition and need. They move to MO. A witness from the choir outlines access patterns, late rehearsals that stretch past midnight, discipleship labels attached to closed-door meetings, a sudden removal from solos when questions surfaced. The janitor testifies to room reservations that multiplied after cameras went down, all under the elder's login. Those logs meet the Friends parking lot video, where denial and legal threats replace pastoral care. The profile tightens: isolate, bind to favors, punish dissent, maintain narrative control. Then, the forensic architecture arrives. A bloodstain analyst walks the jury through physics. A fall from stairs produces diffuse, multi-surface transfer and linear scrapes. What the kitchen offered were low wipe arcs, cast-off freckles on a hanging apron, and a focal, depressed skull fracture. She explains cast-off with one simple analogy. Swing a paintbrush and watch the tiny dots arc away at the end of the stroke. That was on the apron, not drip from a fall. A swing. She points, not performs. The jurors lean in. The tool is next. The marble mortar, photographed on its trivet with a damp ring and a crescent of tissue in the groove. A lab tech testifies to DNA matching the victim within statistical certainty. The defense tries to suggest kitchen cross-contamination. The tech stays anchored. Tissue in a groove is not ambient transfer. It requires contact plus force. The oven clock's 9:22 blink appears on a screen. The wax curve that was still pliable appears beside it. 2 clocks, 1 event. Digital forensics ties the time anchors to intent. A specialist explains the auto-upload from the recorder to a cloud folder labeled The River. He maps the packets that left the rectory Wi-Fi while the confrontation unfolded. He plays 10 seconds only. The block at the door, the demand for a letter, the drawer yanked. He stops before impact. The court has already heard the thock and pretrial motions. The point is placement and sequence, not trauma for its own sake. Metadata becomes the quiet witness. Scheduled alibi texts fire from the bathroom at 9:28, 9:38, and 9:47. The health app shows the boy's heart rate flatlining at 9:24. The prosecutor draws the line without raising his voice. The messages that read as calm chores launched after the life on the floor had already left. The smartwatch on the elder's wrist records a surge at 9:22. The geofence warrant shows both phones parked in the kitchen footprint for the critical window. The router logs show the hall camera disabled by the elder's credentials the day before. He didn't fear rumor. He feared record. Motive is not theater here. It's the natural consequence of the profile. The boy's text, no more. I'm telling them after Sunday, introduces exposure risk to a man whose identity is braided to public virtue. The rideshare receipt and hotel booking show an exit plan. The resignation draft proves intent to leave clean. The prosecutor walks a simple therefore. Therefore, the elder summons the boy to the rectory. Therefore, he avoids the lens. Therefore, when the ask won't bend, he reaches for force. Therefore, after, he stages a fall and sends texts to reframe the night. Witnesses add human texture without letting the narrative sprawl. The sister testifies to the live link, the code for help, the folder she named The River. She doesn't speculate. She says what she heard and what she feared. The friend describes the parking lot confrontation and the elder's shift from concern to legal threat when exposure became possible. The soprano explains how questioning rehearsal hours cost her a solo. Each piece fits the same machine. Control maintained by reward and punishment. The prosecutor anticipates the defense's pivot to consensual framing. He narrows the issue. Consent is not the trial's core. Force is. Even if boundaries were blurred before, the crime is what happened when control failed. He repeats it once. We are not trying belief systems. We are trying a body on tile struck by a tool and the evidence that followed. Finally, he closes the case in chief with the simple diagram the scene already drew. Cast off on the apron, wipe arcs at hand height, a damp ring under a washed mortar, shoe prints with a distinctive worn heel, a banister splintered by hands to dress a narrative, a camera intentionally silenced, and a string of scheduled texts marching across a dead boy's timeline. He doesn't reach for grand language. He returns to the profile. Cold calculation when challenged. The motive was reputation. The method was blunt force. The cover-up was sloppy. The evidence is aligned. The defense comes in calm, polished, and narrow. They don't fight every fact. They reframe the night. Their theme is simple. A tragic accident inside a complicated relationship. They float the word consensual often as if it can dissolve force. They point to the boy's age, 18, reminding the jury that law sometimes recognizes bad choices as choices. They call the elder a mentor who overreached, not a man who killed. First, character attack by implication. A private investigator testifies to the boy's ambition, auditions, emails, a hotel booking. The defense shapes it as opportunism. He used proximity to power. He pushed boundaries for gain. They don't say manipulative. They let the suggestion hover. They pull up messages where the boy thanked the elder for coaching, where he asked for introductions. They highlight gifts, a voice coach stipend, car repairs, as goodwill later twisted into leverage. The jurors see money and access. The defense says gratitude became grievance. Then they strike at forensics with alternative explanations. Their expert concedes blunt force but argues mechanism. A fall with an object at the base can mimic a focal wound, he says. The mortar could have been on the floor. The cast-off on the apron? Not cast off. Transfer from flailing hands during aid. Wipe arcs? Panic cleanup by someone trying to help. The damp ring under the mortar? Kitchen moisture, not a timeline. He talks in maybes. He only needs one juror to prefer doubt. They go after the audio next. Chain of custody, splicing risk, context missing. He was recording a pastoral session without consent, the defense says, and you can't hear the moments before the drawer. They suggest the boy escalated, that a shove turned into a fall, that the sound you think is a swing could be a tool knocked in chaos. They want the 10 seconds to lose narrative power by living alone. When the scheduled texts surface, the defense leans into shock. People act strangely. He needed normalcy anchors. He was standing in the bathroom trying not to vomit, tapping out chores because the brain reaches for routine when it floats. They bring a trauma. Psychologists to say dissociation can look like meticulous behavior. The jurors scribble, some nodding because the sentence tracks a human truth out of context. Then they pivot to moral panic. They avoid doctrine, but they court the sensibility of a community worried about reputations ruined by rumor. They say the elder became a target, a high-profile figure in a town that turns whispers into verdicts. They reference the parking lot video without playing it, calling it edited to inflame. They frame the independent inquiry as institutional self-protection, a bureaucracy searching for a villain. It almost holds, until cross. The prosecutor doesn't attack the relationship frame. He narrows to force and fabrication. He walks the defense expert through spray physics, paintbrush analogy, directionality, height. He puts the apron under a camera and shows the arc ends at mid-swing level, not ground-level flail. He asks the expert to recreate cast-off from hand movement without a swing. The expert hesitates. The pause is long enough. He moves to the staircase. He lays down a full-scale mock-up, riser heights matching the rectory. He sets a gel skull with embedded sensors and sends it down in controlled falls. Scrapes, abrasions, diffuse transfer, no focal depression. Then he places a weighted mortar and taps, then strikes. The focal fracture appears with the strike. The jury watches the data, not drama. The defense calls it theater. The judge calls it demonstrative science. The point sticks. On the audio, the prosecutor plays just before the drawer and just after the first impact, looping the elder's words, "I made you. You owe me," with the block at the door. He asks the trauma expert whether dissociation schedules texts from a bathroom at precise 10-minute intervals, each tied to domestic threads. The expert concedes dissociation creates disorganization, not clockwork. Routine is one thing, orchestration is another. He turns to the Reuter log and the hall camera. "Confidentiality?" he repeats. "You wrote a 2-adult rule for youth when cameras are down. You disabled the camera and waived the second adult. For whom?" Policy drift becomes personal choice. The word exception shrinks under the weight of his own signature. The shoes close the gap. He lays the gel lift beside the elder's heel. Same worn chip. He holds up the towel the shoes sat on, damp with a faint ring of soap and iron. He asks, "If this was Aid after a fall, why are the cleanup arcs in the kitchen, not near the stairs? Why is tissue in a mortar groove?" The defense tries to relabel tissue as incidental. The lab tech's earlier clarity returns. Grooves don't pick up skin by accident. Finally, he invites the jury to separate two questions the defense tried to braid. Whatever this relationship was, the crime is singular. When he could no longer control, he applied force. When force ended a life, he applied narrative. Scheduled alibis aren't grief. A disabled camera isn't pastoral care. A staged fall isn't compassion. The defense's maybes flatten against clocks, stains, and a voice that hardened when challenged. The backfire lands in a small moment. Asked if he blocked the door, the elder's own statement, "I tried to stop him from leaving," plays on the screen. Passive voice becomes a hinge. The jury sees the profile again. Control defended to the last step, then dressed as accident. Doubt loses oxygen. The jury files in with faces that give nothing away. 12 people who have listened to clocks, stains, and a voice shift under pressure. The foreperson stands, paper in hand that shakes a little, and reads without flourish. Guilty of second-degree murder. Not an accident. Not care turned tragic. Force applied when control failed, followed by a stage scene and a digital alibi. The words land plain and heavy. The elder doesn't flinch. His hands twitch once on the table, a tremor he can't discipline away. In the quiet that follows, the court resets to the formal rhythm of sentencing. Before the judge speaks, impact fills the space. The sister stands at a lectern that looks too large for her and delivers a statement that doesn't chase grandeur. She focuses on the ledger. A brother who hummed parts under his breath while washing dishes. An apartment where his metronome still sits at the last tempo he marked for an audition he never reached. She doesn't say monster. She says abusive access turned into a kitchen where time ran out. She asks the court to keep future boys from learning safety by code and folders named The River. She sits without tears. The room breathes differently after. The judge folds the case into a frame the law recognizes. Abuse of authority, breach of trust in a sacred context, violence used to defend reputation. He notes the grooming evidence not as a separate charge, but as a context that aggravates the offense. He calls the staged fall a desecration of process and truth. He references the scheduled texts as calculated, not panicked. He cites the hall camera, a policy written by the defendant and then overridden by him, as proof of premeditated control over the setting. The phrase he chooses is plain. You built a room where accountability could not see, then used force when accountability threatened to enter anyway. The sentence is measured, not theatrical. Decades in state prison. Parole eligibility late, years stacked to ensure that the public record's memory outlasts the impulse to rehabilitate a reputation. Conditions attach. No contact with the victim's family, no contact with youth in any capacity should release ever come. Registration under a supervisory scheme that tracks positions of authority. The judge doesn't sermonize. He identifies the harm. Not just a life ended, but a community taught to mistrust its own structures. He says the law can't fix a culture, but it can mark this act. The elder speaks when invited, because men like him fill silence by habit. He uses careful words: grief, tragedy, misunderstanding. He never says strike. He never says mortar. He says he will pray for those who have persecuted him. The room registers the sentence even if the judge doesn't. The prosecutor's jaw tightens, then relaxes. The defense attorney touches his client's sleeve once, a human gesture in a room that recycles formal empathy. When the cuffs close again, the elder looks not at the judge or the jury, but at the photo binder on counsel table where the mortar sits on its trivet with that damp ring. His eyes hold a beat too long, as if the image is the only honest mirror available. He turns, and the deputies guide him through a door that seals with a thud softer than stone on bone, but more final. Outside, the courthouse steps restage the town's split, but the edges have rounded. Some defenders find their scripts thinner than before. They talk about appeals and bias, but the weight of clocks and physics is difficult to preach around. Others stand with the sister without slogans. They ask how to build a system where rooms resist secrecy by design. A reporter asks the prosecutor what the case was about. He says 4 words: power, evidence, and clocks. Back in the sanctuary later that week, someone slides a note into the hymn board where numbers usually sit. It reads simply, 2 adults, open doors, written times. Not a sermon, a checklist. The choir sings with gaps you can hear. The empty spaces are part of the song now. Institutions don't change by apology. They change by audit. The independent report arrives with the weight of a textbook and the tone of an engineer. It doesn't speculate about character. It measures systems. Oversight failures sit in crisp bullets, cameras that could be disabled by a single credential, counseling policies that relied on trust rather than verification, room bookings without dual approval, complaint channels routed through the very office under scrutiny. The phrase used is structural capture. When one person holds keys, calendars, and culture, accountability becomes optional. The report reconstructs access. Logs show late-night reservations stamped with a single login. Key fob data proves doors opening when no second adult was present. Email threads reveal concerns raised in polite language that went nowhere, forwarded to the elder for resolution, then resolved into silence. The auditors note how doctrine became a cloak, with words like discipleship and care masking unilateral authority. They recommend hard pivots, dual control for surveillance systems, 2 adult policies enforced by software, not memory, and an ombuds office outside the church hierarchy. Policy is the first visible shift. Doors that once closed now default open when minors are inside. Schedules move to a shared platform where edits require a second signature. Every counseling appointment with youth flags an alert to an accountability partner who must check in person before the meeting begins. New signage appears in hallways, windows stay uncovered, cameras remain on, exceptions require written approval from 2 unrelated leaders. The language is bureaucratic. That's the point. Bureaucracy, properly built, resists charisma. Leadership turnover follows. Board members who wrote policies they didn't enforce resign with letters that name no one and everyone. A new interim team arrives with a mandate. Split authority, shorten tenures, rotate committees, cap access. Financial donors who paused giving return with conditions in writing, annual audits, external review of youth programs, public reporting of complaints received and dispositions. Money once bought programs. Now it buys guardrails. There's resistance, quiet and stubborn. Some call the changes punitive, a surrender to fear. But others, more tired than angry, say fear was living under a system where closed doors signaled virtue instead of risk. A retired principal volunteers to train ushers in incident reporting, the mundane art of writing down what you saw, when, who else was there, what was done next. She says the form is your friend because memory drifts when power talks. The choir room becomes a test case. Roster lists go digital with visible edit history. Rehearsal times stop stretching by osmosis. A countdown clock appears on the wall, and when it hits 0, doors open and people leave. Section leaders receive boundary training that doesn't flatter. It drills scenarios. What do you do when mentorship slides toward access? When praise becomes a lever? When a teenager says a meeting felt wrong but can't say why? Role play replaces platitude. It's awkward. It works. The investigation's vocabulary enters sermons without becoming the sermon. Words like transparency, reporting pathway, third-party review show up between psalms and parables. Some hear intrusion, others hear oxygen. The pastor names the cost aloud. Trust was exploited. Culture enabled it. Procedure will now stand where personality once did. He doesn't say the elder's name. He says system, because system is what can be rebuilt. Externally, the denominational office codifies the reckoning. They publish a model policy set, 2-adult rule with no exceptions, visible scheduling with time-stamped logs, quarterly random checks of camera functionality, mandated training for all volunteers with certification tracked like licenses. They set up a regional hotline, staffed by people who don't attend the churches they serve. Reports go there first, then to local leadership. The appeal path runs upward, not back to the person in question. It's an architecture designed to prevent the loop that trapped this case. The town contributes something the institution didn't ask for, but needs. They establish a memorial scholarship for young musicians in the boy's name, funded not by a gala, but by small checks that carry notes like, "Keep the lights on in the safe rooms." And the Sun Scholarships Board includes parents, a public school counselor, and a choir member who insisted on stepping down from any church leadership role to avoid conflict. Governance, by people with no incentive to protect reputation over safety, is the quiet revolution. The friend keeps the parking lot video pinned in a community forum, not as spectacle, but as a reminder that documentation is not betrayal. It is protection when systems fail. Comments stabilize. The argument shifts from whether this happened to what prevents the next version. People ask about background checks, who sees room bookings, how to teach teenagers code words that trigger adult intervention. The sister adds one suggestion: shared folders that go to someone outside the building. The reckoning returns to the beginning. The 911 call. People re-listen and hear what they missed. The rehearsed tremor, the timeline that slipped, the phrase seized before falling that tried to paste medicine over physics. They hear how their ears wanted to believe the man they trusted, and then they hear how evidence, not opinion, held. That becomes the institutional ethic. Build with the assumption that character can fail and that systems must catch what charisma drops. In the end, the church looks less like a sanctuary from scrutiny and more like a place that invites it. The lesson lands hard and usefully. Sacred spaces don't get exemptions from procedure. They get more of it. Because the cost of trusting without checking is written in tile grout and in a choir that sings through an empty space that won't fill for a long time. Consider how power narrows choices. Not by force at first, but by slow calibration. Access becomes privilege. Privilege becomes currency. Currency buys silence. For a teenager chasing a future, gratitude is weaponized as obligation. Each favor installs a hook: the stipend, the car repair, the introduction. If you accept the hook, the line follows. If you pull away, the line cuts. That is the profile. Control disguised as care, dependence manufactured, exit penalized. Now, the mechanics that defeat a staged scene. Why do these facades fail? Physics doesn't bargain. Fluids obey gravity and momentum, not narrative. A fall downstairs paints broad scrapes, smeared transfers, and linear contact points. A blunt strike produces focal fractures, cast-off freckles, and wipe arcs where panic tries to erase. In the kitchen, the ledger wrote itself. Low lateral wipes at hand height, fine mist on a rinsed apron, a concentrated depression under hair. Stairs argue diffusion. Stone argues focus. Think about the wax, the mortar, the shoe prints, the audio, the small clocks that aligned. Wax is a soft metronome. Warm, it yields. Cool, it hardens. When a candle's lip is pliable at the same moment an oven clock blinks 9:22, you gain a temporal bracket no confession can outtalk. The mortar's damp ring on the trivet says it moved and returned recently. Moisture outlines absence. The groove-held crescent of tissue says contact plus force, not ambient transfer. Shoes speak in edges. A worn heel chip is a signature. When that chip prints in blood near the pool and the same shoe sits drying on a towel, you don't need motive to understand movement. The audio is the locked box opening from the inside. I made you. You owe me. Then a block at a door. Then a drawer yanked. Then the physics the room later confirmed. The recorder didn't catch everything. It didn't need to. It fixed sequence. Digital dust closes gaps humans try to widen. Scheduled texts from a bathroom at neat intervals create a pattern that human panic rarely sustains. Health streams chart heartbeats with no loyalty to reputation. G-Fence pings reduce memory to coordinates. Cloud auto uploads break the belief that deleting a device erases an act. If you're building systems to protect youth, consider this. Push reporting into code. Let routers log camera states to third parties. Let schedules demand 2 signatures, not 2 promises. Design like you expect a clever person to cheat. Then, make cheating obvious. Moving from mechanism to motive, remember the locked mind analogy. Some people operate like a box with a single key inside. Reputation is the key. Threats to reputation cannot be tolerated because they are existential. If the only language inside the box is control, every challenge reads as attack, every boundary as betrayal. When the boy said, "No more," the box heard annihilation, not autonomy. The truth was worse than a bad headline. It was a loss of self built on borrowed virtue. Which brings us to cost. One life ended, a trajectory cut mid-phrase. One life caged, years measured by counts and clanks. Between them, a community forced to excavate the foundation it stood on and admit how easily admiration becomes cover. The Sopranos' folded robe is not scenery, it's a ledger entry. The scholarship is not charity, it's restitution to futures. Policy is not bureaucracy, it's a promise to the next kid who doesn't yet know he'll need it. Open loops closed, the wax tied to time, the mortar tied to force, the shoe prints tied to the wearer, the audio tied to sequence and intent, the hall camera tied to a decision to turn sight off. You can call that coincidence. You can also call it a lattice that held when a story collapsed. The thing is, cases like this don't end at sentencing. They end when rooms are built that don't let a single person own keys, clocks, or narratives. When a teenager can text a code to 2 adults who are required to show up. When a parent can see in real time that a door labeled study is open and a camera is on. When a pastor can't disable a lens without notifying someone who does not answer to him. That's not distrust. That's trust with rails. If you work in any setting with youth, take one lesson from the evidence. Assume your character will never be the only safeguard you need. Then build systems that make you prove it. The rectory's kitchen still holds the curve of wax and the outline of a ring where stone sat wet. And that is the truest clock of the night. If you want more cases built from the ground up, motives, methods, and the profile laid bare, subscribe and watch the next investigation on institutional betrayal. Let me know in the comments, what safeguard would have stopped this sooner?